Hi guys, I'm Alex with Delmarva REI, and I'm here with
Melissa Geeslin with Goosehead Insurance.
Hi Melissa, good to have you here, and thank you for inviting me for your office. It's a beautiful office.
Thank you.
And we're gonna have Melissa come in over and speak with us on our September meetups, and I want to give you guys a little bit a teaser of what we're gonna be talking about. So Melissa is an insurance agent in the Salisbury area, in the Delmarva area.
Mm-hmm.
I love Melissa because she give me all the quotes, and she have insight on insurance. And if I have any questions, she just texts me right away. It's awesome. So I have some questions here from Melissa, and you let me know what are the correct answers, or what your thoughts about everything. So the first question I have: what are the common misconceptions or mistakes that real estate investors typically make about choosing insurance? What do you see?
So for my professional opinion, I would say that when an investor calls me, usually we're underneath a very tight timeline to meet the needs of the capital, wherever that's coming from.
Okay.
And many times it's like, I just want the cheapest, best policy possible to get me to closing. And we work with a lot of investors, and that's probably the number one thing we hear all the time. So it's really just about taking the time to take a step back and allow your insurance agent, whether that's me or anyone else, to ask you a couple questions. We want to be sure that you're not going to get a cancellation notice 15 days after you close on a property. And so it's really, we're probably going to ask you a few more questions about that in order to get you the best price policy for the situation. May not be the cheapest, because we want a policy that's going to live with you based on the situation, based on the occupancy, and some other things we'll talk about.
That's great,
well.
And thank you so much. Yeah, cheapest is not always the best. Another question I have is, commonly, I think it's going to be more for everybody, not only investors, is a lot of people understand actual cost versus replacement cost when you're talking about insurance. So can you give me what is each one of them means?
Sure. So actual cash value, when you look at your policy, actual cash value will be abbreviated to ACV.
Okay.
And
ACV.
replacement cost value will be abbreviated to RCV. So what those mean is let's start with replacement cost value, because that's the best replacement cost or the best policy that you would want. Replacement cost means if you have a claim and your claim is $10,000, your deductible is $1,000, more than likely they're going to be giving you or your contractor a check for $9,000, because they're going to replace it for like-kind quality. Nice. And they're not going to depreciate it.
That's awesome. Okay.
Where actual cash value means that they're basically going to look at how old the material is they're going to be replacing or repairing, and they're going to look at the condition of that. So roofs are actually the most commonly placed at actual cash value. So if you have a roof that's 20 years old and you show moss growth, or there's granular loss, and you have an ACV policy, if your claim is $10,000 and your deductible is $1,000, you would think, okay, $9,000, incorrect. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be getting 5, 4, 3, sometimes 0, depending on the condition. So they actually look at product, material, condition, the wear and tear on it, and they depreciate that accordingly. So ACV policies are great on older properties that are in poor repair, or for investors that can bankroll or cash flow the necessary repairs. But you have to be careful about, you pay for an insurance for a reason. And so if you're paying for insurance, a lot of the times investors get frustrated when they get the actual payout from a claim, and it's because you have ACV compared to RCV.
Yeah, and definitely when I ask Melissa and can I see what's the increase in price and how much it will be extra to have that, in just kind of peace of mind. So, if you're an investor, maybe you have a cash flow and you're okay with that. But if you are not okay with that, maybe just a few extra, $100 a year. I don't know how much it's going to be, but just talk to Melissa.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question I have, liability insurance. So I think liability insurance is not something we want to hear about. Never want to deal with. But how does liability insurance works for landlords, and what are the common liabilities that you saw in the past, if you ever?
Sure. So you are so correct. a liability. No one really wants to think about it in some cases, but that's really probably where a property investor's greatest exposure can be. And you never want to have a potential liability claim or a liability claim, because those will actually haunt your insurance rates for a period of 7 to 10 years. The old 3-year rule is a myth. But with liability exposures, it really comes down to the ownership of the property. So if an individual owns it, or an entity like an LLC or a corporation owns it, there's different levels of liability you have to think about based on your personal assets or the assets of that company.
Okay.
So structuring your properties does have an influence on liability. The second liability that we see the most is property condition. So there's stairs leading up to the front door. Maybe the handrail is missing or is loose.
Okay.
The porch or the deck may not be in good condition. Maybe you have stairs going up to a second floor unit that are interior or exterior, and they just don't, the carpet isn't secured correctly. So slip and falls are something that we see a lot of. Now, if your property is occupied and your renters have insurance, which everyone should based on their lease agreement, the renter's insurance is going to cover to a point of those guests coming and going. But if their insurance company deems that the property was in poor repair or there was a dangerous situation, you better believe the liability is going to come back to the property owner, because really that's your responsibility. And last but not least, the conditions of your lease can either protect your exposure or they cannot. So if you allow your tenants to have dogs, trampolines, temporary pools, swing sets, any of those things, that can actually increase your liability, because in most cases, once the renter's policy is exhausted, if your lease allows certain characteristics to be had on property, that person who's seeking that claim can actually come back to you, because your lease might not have been strong enough in those things.
Yeah, so
that's what we see the most.
Yep, and definitely that's why you want to have a property management system, or a good lease, and which will we have this on August. And yes, and no trampolines, no swing sets, and we have no pool allowed in our leases, I think.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
And when it comes to dogs, not all dogs are bad, right? And that's the number one thing that I get questions about. Okay, where's the list of dogs that they shouldn't have? There is a list of dogs that are considered aggressive. Now, we've had some cats attack people. We've had some chihuahuas attack people. They're not on that list. But it's just important that anytime you are entering into a new property, or even just doing a review every year with your agent on your current properties and tenant situations, and making sure that whatever you're requiring in that lease is going to give you the best opportunity to not have a liability claim is important.
All right, great. I love the touch on the pets thing as well.
Yeah.
Now, something that we see a lot of going on right now with short-term rentals.
Yes.
And I know they're a different breed a little bit. So what is the extra coverage that you need for like Airbnbs, VRBOs? What else do you need to think about? Say, hey, or is there a specific policy that you need for that? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that also depends on who is actually managing your short-term rental. Also, it could be where is the entire home or condo or property available for short-term rental? Are you doing what's called home sharing, where you're allowing a room in your house, or maybe a secondary building on your property to be rented, but maybe you're occupying the primary home, or maybe you have a long-term tenant in the one building and you have a short-term in the other. There's a lot that you can do today, and insurance companies are definitely keeping up with this conversation because it's a very hot market. A lot of people are doing accessory dwelling units if the local zoning allows it, or they're renting condos, or they're creating these multi-family rental situations for short-term rentals. The main thing is that it does come back to the ownership of the property. If you're owning it as an individual, you have many more options. than if you're owning as an LLC or a corporation. But basically, it's a little endorsement on your policy called short-term rental. It's also known as home sharing. Now, who manages that for you makes a huge difference. So if you privately manage your own short-term rentals, meaning that you don't have a relationship with Vacasa, VRBO, or Airbnb, some of the mainstream companies we all know of, if you're managing that as an individual, you can do that, but just keep in mind you need a really strong umbrella policy in place, because when you partner with a third party, yes, I know they charge you fees, but a lot of the times the reason why they're charging you those fees is because they're extending bodily injury liability by $1 million. They're extending property damage to your location by $1 million. So they're actually accepting more of the risk, and that's part of the insurance that's included in the fees that they're charging you that could potentially save you the direct out-of-pocket fee somewhere else. And because you're paying into a shared fund, that insurance is always going to be cheaper for them to manage than for you to manage as an individual. So those are the main differences, I would say, and things to look out for.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then just a little quick tip. Airbnb actually doesn't almost charge you very little fee. So it's great. And, VRBO charges you more. I haven't delved into that yet. But, it's I think the third party, it's a lot, for me personally, it's a lot safer to go versus doing myself, because then you don't know who's booking with you and everything else. But I know a lot of people actually do the direct bookings, and it's a hot topic right now. So if you have any other tips on those, let us know. We'd love to hear that. Common claim that you see for
common claims. So knock on wood, because this is solid wood. I'm knocking on wood for good luck, because a lot of the times whenever a claim does arise because of when a claim arises from a tenant situation, the great thing is that all of our property investors have a really solid lease. They usually have a property management company in place, and the tenant has the levels of insurance they should have in order to protect from many different things. The common claims that we have seen on the other side are just acts of nature. I mean, that's really the most common claim, is going to be an act of nature, which is a thunderstorm or a windstorm coming through that blows a tree branch onto a roof, or blows that down onto a property, onto a shed you may have. But then the second most common claim that we see has to do with water and sewer. So you could be on public services, or you could have a property with private services. But one of the coverages we recommend always looking into is called water sewer backup coverage, which means that if those external systems malfunction, whether it's the city's fault or it's on your private system, there's only one way for that sewage, which is pretty gross, to go, which is back into your house. Now, it can be because your tenant son flushed Captain America. That happened. And somebody used the toilet after, and obviously we had a huge mess to clean up. But it could be as simple as the septic or the sewer system becoming overloaded or malfunctioning and pushing that back in. That's not covered by a standard homeowner's dwelling or landlord policy. So on all of our policies, we add in at least $10,000 in coverage for that.
Right.
It is subject to your deductible. Depending on the property, maybe it's $5,000, but those are the unexpected things that your property management company is going to be getting a call about, or if you privately manage your properties, you're going to be getting a call about, because it doesn't stop until it's turned off, and then you have a huge mess. So that's the number 2. As far as number 3, that's kind of an interesting one. We have everything from where there's like small little kitchen fires, right? With little grease fires your tenants may have, that you own the property, and most, their coverage doesn't cover damage to the property no matter what happens. So it's little common things, but fairly, reasonable whenever it comes to, we've had a couple dog bites where tenants' dogs have bit a neighbor. It could be walking it or whatever. The tenants had the right insurance, so the landlord didn't have to worry about it. So just coming back to that point of just sitting down and talking with your agent about, here's the tenant I have in place, here's the characteristics that they have, because you can't really remove, if your lease says they can have a dog and they have a dog, but it's not a dog you want them to have, you can't really remove them from that, right? They have a lot of protections too. So it's just making sure you're insured for the right situations and the right times.
All right.
And that might be a once a year or twice a year, or
yeah.
Alex and I talk a lot, so.
Yeah. I know we had a tree that fell down from our property to somebody else's property. And in Maryland, it's where the tree falls is
the responsibility.
Yeah. So we had some. They had some. It was a long time ago. It was like a mess, but luckily nothing was going on. Okay. So Melissa, where can people find you?
Yes, so you can find us if you Google Goosehead Insurance, Melissa Geeslin. My last name starts with a G. You can find us there, or what you'll find our website. We're also on Facebook under Goosehead Insurance Melissa Geeslin, and on Instagram Goosehead Insurance Melissa Geeslin. So pretty there. Also, we are located in Salisbury, but we travel to you no matter where you are. I just walked 4 properties in Princess Anne for a fellow investor, and we can go just about anywhere, and we're licensed in Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. If you have properties elsewhere, I have partner agents too, so we can really be a total solution for no matter what your needs are. But yeah, and I look forward to seeing everyone in September.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.